Hello and welcome to the Doctors Who Read Stuff. My name is Chris.
My name is Chip.
And
My name is
today
Brian.
we are covering the first part of the sixth story in The Last Wish, which is entitled The Last Wish.
Dun, 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 dun.
All right, so we're going to kind of break down what happens briefly. We're going to have some discussion, and since this is the last one, the last story in the book, this is our second to the last episode before we move on to our next big thing.
It's our penultimate Witcher Last Wish episode, right? Sweet. So this one we start with the voice of reason. I think it's chapter 6 or part 6 or whatever they call it in the book. Geralt is still hanging out with Nenneke. She's kind of tending some plants and stuff and kind of mixing up some potions and things because his reaction times are still slow. He's still healing. He's not fully ready to really go back out into the world, but they discuss Yennefer, who is a sorceress that Geralt has got some sort of relationship with. We don't know much other than that, but Geralt wants to give part of his reward for the Striga to the temple, but he also wants to save a few gems for Yennefer to help her search for a cure. Don't know what that means. But basically then they kind of, that voice of reason ends, and we kind of go into the main story for The Last Wish, where Dandelion and Geralt are fishing, and they've got some giant catfish on the line. I forget what. Dandelion changes the bait or something, and all of a sudden this huge catfish is on the line, and they fight for a while, and it snaps the line. And at some point, I don't remember how they come up with the vase. Was it tied to the other line, or it was they snagged it somehow?
There was
didn't
another
they?
line that they had in the water, and when Dandelion tried to pull it in,
That was right.
it was on that.
Yeah. So, and then during the struggle, the vase falls to the ground. A large red cloud of mist escapes. Geralt dives for cover. Dandelion thinks it's a genie, starts making wishes. All of a sudden, Dandelion loses his voice and can't speak, can't breathe. So Geralt kind of packs everything up and takes him to the town of Rinde and tries to ask for help, but so he kind of hangs out with some elves in I don't remember where he is hanging out with them, but anyway, he hangs out with a couple of elves in a night, and they wait till dawn so then they can go meet with the sorceress in town. I think that we're kind of stopping the discussion tonight. That's it.
Yeah. So yeah, to your point, Rinde, which is just north of Temeria in Redania, is is close to some of the other locations we've already visited. Now, we've got them all up on the map, and when we started reading, I was wondering if there would be like some sort of a pattern to the locations, but they're just kind of all over the place, so there might be something that I don't see, but maybe I was just trying to read too much into it.
Did you say that Sapkowski had other people have made the maps? He didn't really draw any maps or do any of this kind of the world building stuff, did he? Outside of the story?
I think when he was asked why he'd never released an official map, he said that other people have done a far better job than he could have done on it, or something to that effect. So yeah, there's nothing official from him, but I think we can take what we've been able to find online as truth, especially since so many of them are the same or similar.
Did Netflix put anything out when any?
Yeah,
I don't believe they did.
Supplementary material.
So, no. Not that I've seen.
I didn't know. I had never really looked, but okay.
Rewatching a couple of the episodes, including this one, with the opening scene or the closing credits. So I don't remember anything in the middle, but
I just remember like
Yeah.
Game of Thrones kind of had that whole map, but it was based on
They
what
did,
Martin
yeah.
created. So that I didn't
Right.
know if Netflix had come up with anything with this one. But anyway, okay, I digress.
Yeah. So I went out and I found a fan art creation for the Djinn. And this is by... Hold on, I know this. Vladimir Kafanov.
Sounds very Russian.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a strong name.
Maybe.
Definitely like an Eastern European name.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
excuse me. So when there's a lot that kind of happens when the jar breaks and this thing comes out, because Dandelion's
Yeah.
convinced that it's a djinn or a genie, and it'll grant him 3 wishes.
hmm
And
And
go ahead.
he jumps in. He's like super anxious. He's ever the happy-go-lucky individual. He's just like, I want this. I want this guy on. I want, all these.
Yeah,
I
he
can't
had.
believe that was his first wish of all things.
Oh, I know. He had his
But
wishes right in his back pocket. He was ready to
Yeah,
go.
it's like there
right?
was no hesitation
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. What was it? He wanted that his rival die of apoplexy.
Yeah.
And he wanted this girl to be in love with him, and I don't think he
Yeah.
finished his third
And then
one.
they lost. I think he
Yeah, he
lost
didn't
his.
get the third
Yeah,
one
the
before he
genie
started.
attacked
Yeah.
him,
Yeah.
or took his voice and his breath or whatever away from him.
So, and this is kind of the interesting part where things get a little jumbled, but Geralt is trying to find like the seal that sealed this
Yep.
thing in, and he
Mm-hmm.
shouts an exorcism that he heard from like a priest or somebody at a temple once, and he thrusts this seal
Yeah.
out in toward the djinn, yells this exorcism, and the thing just leaves. Um,
Yep.
But at that point, the damage has clearly already been done to Dandelion. Now, I couldn't find a fan art or any sort of a literature representation, but I did find a behind-the-scenes photo from this Netflix episode that kind of showed Jaskier's makeup for the neck after the thing got a hold of him. So it's,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's pretty
it is.
intense.
It kind of looks like, oh shoot, what do they call that?
Like a
Goiter, that's it.
goiter.
I knew it started with a G,
Oh,
but
that's
I
a
was
good
like,
call.
gout? No, that's not right.
hmm
No, no.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. So like he's like coughing up blood, and he's having problems breathing, and he can't talk, and so
Yep.
they go to the nearest town, city, settlement, which is Rinde.
Yeah, and I think it was like a day's ride too.
Yeah.
So he was like in a hurry and trying to find him
Right.
help. So
hmm
Now, Rinde is, and this comes into play here in a second, but notorious for not trusting and not being welcoming of any sort of magic. And when
which is a little ironic.
right, and when he arrives at the gate, I think it's at night, right? It's past the time where they can open the gate and let him in.
Yeah, the gates are closed between dusk and dawn, so he doesn't get there until after
Did they
dusk.
say
and
why?
kind of gets turned away at the gatehouse. I don't recall that they did.
Yeah, I don't remember either, but
I don't remember it
I
either.
was wondering if it was to keep something out that only came out at night, but who knows?
That could be.
Yeah, I think that it was closed between dusk and dawn, and they needed the only way they could get in is with a letter of safe conduct from the king or proof of nobility.
Mhm.
Which,
And then the guard offers them that they can stay in the gatehouse until dawn.
at least your friend will have the warmth of a fire, he says. And when they get in there, so this is there are elves in there, right? And this is the second time I think in this book that we've encountered elves, and they've been very
Yeah, because the other one was with
We had
the
Torque.
guy in the
yeah.
valley that was.
The hill elves.
Yeah.
But this is a very different
Yeah.
experience from the other time they showed up, because they are not hostile. They're not trying to like kill anybody. They're just like hanging out.
No, they're seem fairly friendly, and it's 2 elves and a
Yeah.
half elf, if I remember right. It was Sheridan, Airedale, and Vladimir.
I didn't try to actually pronounce the
yeah.
names, so I'm going to give you points for doing
Nope.
so.
Okay. All right, I'll jot that down.
But this
put
is
that in my
where they
bag.
kind of talk about the town mistrusting magic, and then they also mention because the elves are also
Yeah.
skilled in healing, and they're looking at him and they're like, I don't know, traditional medicine's
Yeah.
not going to help this guy.
We can't do it. This is a mad. Yeah. Yeah, because they say there's penalties and
Right.
stuff for spellcasting in the city, and that because of that, I thought they said the mages are boycotting, coming to Rinde in return, but then they talk about one who is there.
Kind of like, and they said that this magician or this wizard or sorceress is holed up in somebody's, like, is it the mayor's house or something like that? Was it?
It was a nobleman
She's residing in the sanctuary provided by the Novigradian
That's what it was.
merchant ambassador Bo
Interesting.
Barant.
So, okay.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of the setup for this week.
Yeah.
So this is, as we kind of got from that voice of reason from that first little part, this is the first appearance of Yennefer. Now, if anybody has watched the Netflix series, I believe this is episode 5 where this particular story arc takes place.
Yeah, so they kind of introduced her earlier in the season and gave some background stuff that actually the second part of the story does touch a little bit on her background, but until now we don't really know of her in the book. We haven't heard of her until
and I think it's interesting to really point out that the Netflix series, even though some things that happen out of order, I think how they approached it with covering those 2 or 3 different time periods right off the bat, once you figured out what was going on, it worked really well. It was still a little confusing in places, but I mean, this gave you like some background going in, so when they get here, you kind of have something to fall back on. And for people that have played the games, clearly you're familiar with Yennefer. She's one of the love interests or lust interests of Geralt. But yeah, major character in the series. So this is kind of the first story where she appears. So starting next week, we will discuss thoughts of Yennefer. We will figure out where this entire thing is going. And it's worth noting that none of us were fans of the previous story in this book. And
that's true.
And so far, I like this one a lot better.
It's building up a lot more, and plus, especially if you've seen the Netflix show, like you kind of have a special pull towards Dandelion, or at least I did. He's a very likable character, someone who I know a lot of people in real life who kind of have his personality, so I'm concerned for him.
Well, and I think it's funny that, The Witcher, for as hard of a time, or Geralt, as hard of a time as he gives him, he does care about him and, likes his companionship. So I think it's kind of nice to see his reaction as one of, I've got to, save him, rather than, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that side of him.
It is, and so this is maybe just me and how my brain works, but like so coming off of the last story, which I didn't really like, I was kind of just not looking. I wasn't looking forward to starting this one. I was just like, ugh. You kind of hit that place where you like slow down and it's not as fun as it was, and you're just like, is the rest gonna be like this? So for me to come through and be like, oh okay, it took me a couple of pages after the catfish fight for me to be like, okay, this isn't gonna suck. We're good. so, but
So you're saying Geralt got catfished?
yeah, no, yeah.
oh, that's kind of
Hmm.
possible. Yeah, that is kind of what happened.
Yeah.
A
So
little bit, but
We'll touch on that maybe
yeah,
next
I,
week.
it, yeah, it took me a little while to get back into it, and I was kind of like you, Chris. I think I kind of just drug my feet, and then we'd done a kind of a car ride. We went to visit some family, so I had time in the car, and I kind of churned through it, and about a third of the way into it, I was like, okay, this is going better. So then I kind of ripped through the last, 2/3 of it pretty
yeah.
quickly and enjoyed it.
And I think it's worth pointing out that so far in the story, it seems to move pretty closely along with the Netflix episode.
Yes, it does.
Yes, this particular one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next week we will be covering part 2. Well, in part 2 we will be covering the second part of this story. Yeah,
That makes
better.
sense.
That's better. So, if you liked what you've heard, please click the like button. Please click the subscribe button so you can follow along next week and so you can see what we're doing going forward. And we thank you very much for your time, and we'll talk to you next time.
Until then, Allons.